this figure?
So you're talking.
We're going to talk about
Project.
Okay.
We need to project.
So Alex was just saying that we want to have a conversation about the program coordinator role in AYS. This is one, and I know we've had multiple conversations in the past. I just, with a lot of the difficulties that we've had, especially with heroin and other drugs in the community, et cetera, and the extra emphasis that it puts onto, or the extra burden that it puts onto Andover Youth Services, because the parents, they don't know where to turn, so they turn to Bill and his staff. And what are they going to do? Turn them away? No, and they never would, and they never have. Quite frankly, they're drowning because they can't do the programs that they are tasked to do because of this extra effort. Never mind if we truly had a position that brought that social worker mentality into in-house, it'll give us the capability to really be able to work with those families in the right way. So I would make a motion that we figure out how to add that position into the structure. And I know we've had all these discussions about trying to meet the magical cut numbers, et cetera. But this is one that I feel is critically important. You know, similar to the discussion we just had with the school committee. I know this is off topic a bit, but if you take a program like the autism program that's.
Let's just stay.
I know, but
you're going to make a motion.
If we went out of district, that's $300,000 per student to take out of district. We take 3 students, we've blown through that $900,000 that we were saying to savings. So anyway, getting back to this, I make a motion that the Board of Selectmen instructs Buzz to figure out how to incorporate the program coordinator / social worker position into the AYS budget.
Is that still maintaining the $200,000 savings, Mr. Mayor?
I'm not even as concerned associated with maintaining that $200,000 magic number. I think, you know, us being able to have some amount of savings that slows our rate of growth, that's great. But let's not be penny wise, pound foolish. Let's figure out if we need to not quite hit the 200,000 because we're adding, you know, a $40,000 position or whatever it is, then you know, let's task the town manager with figuring out the right way to be able to do it and be able to meet our other budget needs.
I was vocal about it last time. I'm fully supportive of the position. I'll second your motion. I think it's important, though, to maintain that $200,000 savings. So finding a way to fund it inside the existing budget, ensuring the $200,000 savings, because if we're asking the school committee to do the same thing, then we should do the same thing on our side. And not say, well, we think this position's okay, and let's move forward and bypass the $200,000 savings and yet still ask the school committee to commit to 4.
I think we need to give
I think the town manager needs to look at
direction.
it.
We need to give clear direction as well. Marion,
What does our public health director have to say about this? Has there been an interdepartmental gathering of the key people who would have very valuable input on this whole position? So I would say our police chief, our public health director, certain individuals in our schools, for instance. How much thought has gone into this?
So I don't know whether
Ms. Buzz, that's a question.
Yeah, no,
for Buzz.
we have not had a sort of an interdepartmental review. I haven't sat down with the police chief, the the fire chief, because they've done some of the Narcan stuff, or the public health director.
Right.
You know, initially, again, this position was for a program assistant to free Bill, Tony, and Glenn from, again, more routine tasks, so they could do more of the kinds of things that Brian described.
But that's not what this is asking.
No, but now this is asking for, you know, a program coordinator position, a higher level position, a $54,000 a year position, which is pretty much, if you look at in the school, well, it would be a person with a master's degree. Now, you know, should it be a social worker? I don't know. We'd have to really talk about a certified social worker is a whole nother thing, a whole nother beast. But certainly, you know, a youth worker, someone at that level would have experience in counseling, in working with youth, and perhaps have a specialty in, you know, in family counseling, and perhaps counseling youth, and perhaps addiction, that kind of thing.
Right. But it sounds like we haven't had the broad discussion to really decide what is the best fit for us,
Correct.
right? At a time when this obviously is a very important issue. I think it's, for that reason, it's very, very important to address it and get the right person or people in place, in the right place. Not just making a decision because there's a request on the table, which is growing out of something else. I don't think this is a good idea at all.
Well,
And I'm really surprised that there hasn't been discussion with, you know, people like our around the table discussion. It could happen this week with our health director, with our police chief, with the number of key stakeholders in our community who can give us very valuable input on how best to deal with this in the short term. I'm not saying kick it down the road, but I think we need to have more in-depth discussion with the experts that we have in our community.
What do you consider this? What's the this, if I may?
Well, you're asking for an individual in the youth services department, right, to deal with
Youth and families.
youth
Right.
and families,
Youth and
right?
families, yeah.
Because you know, I'm not convinced, quite honestly, that we need, you know, someone's going to deal with heroin. I mean, I think, and to put it bluntly, I think it's a knee-jerk reaction to use heroin as the basis. That's not, we're not in that business. There's people,
Correct.
there are people who are far more expert in that. What I'm hearing around here is that perhaps it needs to be, again, another, you know, well-trained youth worker who can deal with youth and families and have some expertise with various issues, including addiction.
To this point, you know, we've only, I mean, to this point, these meetings that we've discussed this, we've only had a brief mention about this position from Bill, and I applaud him for bringing this position forward, seeing a need in the community. Personally, I'd love to have him up here and have him tell us what he envisions this position to be, because we haven't gotten that vision yet from him, really addressing the board.
Yeah, please.
Because,
Where would you like, right here, next to, there's the microphone here.
could I just have a clarification before you continue, Janie Moffett from Beacon Street? Mr. Fahey, when you first presented in that Saturday morning, you asked for something very different and said going forward you want to think about this position. Is that right, or did I?
No, we had a discussion at, just to clarify, we had a discussion at, should I sit?
Yeah, because that way the mic
That way
picks you up.
can hear that. Actually, hear me, we had, I believe you're referring to the March 1st
Yes.
FinCom meeting?
Yes.
There was a discussion about positions, and I, as the director of the youth services, I requested 2 positions. One was sort of an entry-level position, more on the administrative side of just helping to work as a department. And the other one was, we're getting a little bit confused here, where it's because
that's what
well, it's a community support program coordinator for the Andover Youth Services. And the model for the Andover Youth Services is youth development.
Right,
And
because
as
this
far as the
sounds
youth
like a
development
switch
goes-
of mission.
Well, no, it's not really a switch of missions. I think it was asked to be by a FinCom member, which position would you think would be most helpful to your
Right.
community?
Right.
And which one would you prefer? And I said, absolutely, the community support person. And then we had a lengthy discussion in regards to what that meant, and what we would do, and we talked about that. There was a few questions that needed to be answered around that. I wrote a response and sent that to clarify some of the points. In terms of positions, I'm a little confused because the way we do it in the town is we make a request. The directors of the departments make a request and we put it through. And it goes through the proper channels, and that's what I did. This person would directly answer to me. I've been there for 20 years. And where I would say we're one of the leading youth development agencies in the Merrimack Valley. There's an issue that's been presented across the state. There's been things going on, and I was told that this is a year that potentially we could ask for a position for the town. I've asked for a position for the last 13 years. The last position I got was 2000.
For this particular position, Bill, I'm sorry?
Yeah.
Or for just another program assistant?
Well, as the director of the department, ask for what you think you need most to serve the community. So I asked for a support person, and I think we got a little confusion. I said, most likely this is someone that has a master's degree in social work, community social work. It's a different position than school social work, clinical social work in an office, receiving payments, doing that whole piece. This is someone that is an advocate for young people, an advocate for families. They develop programs based on your community needs. So right now we have a lot going on, and one of the things that the people across the Merrimack Valley, people across the state, is an increase in opiate use, an increase in heroin, and an increase in marijuana use. But I've also discussed that position in terms of our large community with 6,500 young people. And what I've asked is that this person come in and work on the youth services department, just like any other department that would ask for a position and go through the channels. I believe that, the police department and myself did a forum that some of you people were here. It's highly attended. It was attended by school people that support young people every day. And from that forum that we did, we started to hear and listen to the parents that were kind of missing something. We need to do a little bit more. So based on my experience and my work, I put together a request to help solve a community problem. That's been our history for the last 20 years. One of the things that I've asked for is, in terms of the youth services department, it's been presented this way, where you can have a position, but you need to pay for it. So in order for me to do that, then I'm gonna have to start some other sports program somewhere else, create revenue, pay for the position. Meanwhile, a topic that everybody's been talking about in the community, our community, other communities across the United States, particularly on the Eastern Seaboard with young people, is we're gonna research it and study it and talk about it. And I just brought what I believe is a proactive approach to adding something to this community that would add a lot of value. And this person, which the pay level's, 55 to 60, somewhere in there, what you're gonna get for that is someone that works with young people on a daily basis. We're a non-traditional agency. I don't necessarily compare myself to anybody else. I think what we do is look at the young people in our community, the parents in our community, listen to their need, and then create partnerships to solve problems that are in our community. So the request was simply made, it was based on a need in the community, I think like most of our departments do, to go through the proper channels. This is gonna be, I think, an asset to our community. It's gonna build stronger bridges between the people in the school that are already doing amazing work with our young people. It's gonna serve more in the non-traditional school hours, not the school, it's the afternoons, early evenings, perhaps on the weekends. It's gonna work better with our police department for outreach. I personally know that Pat Keefe, the police chief, supports it. I spoke to him about it today. I have no problem saying that in public. You guys can check with him tomorrow. He's the one, we were the first time in my history that we did a forum with the police department. It was well attended, and from that, we continue our conversation.
So this would be two positions, though? That
No,
now
I'm
you're
asking for one position.
So you're taking back
Yes.
the one, and you're saying this is a priority?
Yes, I'm sorry. If you want to give me two, I will take two.
No, but that was where I was confused, because
sorry.
that day, I thought your priority, this was second priority.
Thank you, I'm sorry. I
Saturday the
didn't-
first,
yes.
it sounded like the first priority was for a program assistant, is that the right term?
First priority was the community support person.
Okay.
That was my first priority
Okay,
as the
I
director of
didn't
youth
get it.
services.
Okay.
What I think was talked about perhaps and recommended, I think by the, Buzz, you could speak to that, I think he maybe
The town
recommended
manager
the other
recommended the other
position, but it never, it didn't
Okay,
make it.
and then
Either one
have
didn't
you
make it.
got like a job description done? 'Cause
Yes.
I missed that.
Well, the youth services has job descriptions, for the
Posted.
town in general. The added pieces on this would be a focus on non-fee based programs, because what I've had to do to survive is focus on making money, making money, making money. And I think that that is a slippery slope, you know. We're not asking for 10 social workers, we're just asking for one that would help sort of extend the care that the school already provide to our young people into the afternoon and evening. And I think it's a non-traditional approach. I think it's very hard for people to understand youth development. But if you Google it, look it up, it's a major in college now, it's a what, on a daily basis, I get outreach from other communities going, what are you doing up there in Andover? What's going on? How can you engage these young people in this and that? And I said, well, from day one, we go to them and say, you're now our partners to help us find solutions. So it's just one more person on our team to connect with young
And
people.
this is a full-time person, but they wouldn't be working your hours necessarily.
Well, yeah, they would. It's part of our team. We work a lot of hours.
But they would be on call evenings and weekends because you're
Yeah, we're all on call. We're there if a young person that needs assistance with anything, we're going to be there. And we're a bridge between that young person and whatever it is. You want to build a skate park in your community, you want to start lacrosse in your community, you want to build a youth center in your community, you want to put on a telethon in your community, or a young person that perhaps, it happens, we're no different than any community. Loss of a parent due to cancer, a divorce in the family, you know, suicidal thoughts, drug issues, loneliness, isolation. You know, that's part of our program too. It's not something we walk around and talk about a lot, because it's a very personal issue for families and for young people. But I can tell you that's our concern, you know, that young people keep moving forward, keep making the right choices, and we support them as much as we can, you know. And as a community, and I think some people maybe say, well, why are we doing this? You know what, because that's what Andover's about. That's why Andover stepped up and started the youth services 20 years ago. Because 3 young people committed suicide in this community, and leaders like yourself got together and said, well, maybe we're missing something. Maybe we need to find a new way to interact with our young people. And I was hired. And we've been supported from the beginning until tonight, and always by the Selectmen, some of you people here. It's just hard to figure out how to do this. But this, I think for this position, and the money that we're asking for, you're going to get a tremendous asset to our community and to our families. That will, you know, we work very hard to care about this town. So we have a job description, we have a mission, they become part of the team, they do outreach to our community, they do forums, they work with people. Some of the people that do amazing work in the schools are here tonight. And we connect better with them. It's just one more person.
Let's give the clarity on this position.
Yes, and just to add, to the point of, we have job descriptions for all of our positions, and this would be a program coordinator. We do have and it's the same basic job description that Tony would have. He's considered a program coordinator, and it's an I-20. So that there's no question about what the job description is, and I'm glad Bill explained it for all of us so we could understand a little bit more.
Except that this is different, because
That's-
you want a social worker.
Well,
No, wait.
Tony's not a social worker.
no, he's not a social
So
worker.
a master's, so in other words, you could come to work for the youth services and be a support program coordinator and have your master's in social work.
You could.
It's a common study, yeah, just like, that was my track, but I got a little off the kick in the side time. So you can have your master's, now, just understand, the ability to have your master's in social work, for me, is the director that does this. This person now can do things like, we've had an interest from like Lowell, BC, BU, they have interns. They're studying social issues and community issues and looking at things like drugs and addiction and family systems and things. We now can invite them to be part of our mission and come and do their internship here in Andover and create after-school or in-school programs and that. We're not a traditional social work agency where we collect, take your insurance number, you sit in an office and wait and then go in. That's not what I'm talking about. You could be a community social worker, have your master's in social work, and create community programs to help the people that live in your communities, whether it's your senior population, your family population, or your youth population. Every youth services staff member here, part of their job description written here is to support young people.
But
So that's what we're- that's what I'm trying to do.
qualification-wise, that's what you're looking for. You're not looking for a psychiatrist, a
Nope.
psychologist, a
Nope.
nurse psychiatrist. You're
Nope.
looking for a psychiatric social worker or
I'm
social
look-
worker counselor.
Yeah.
So you know,
Yeah.
right? You gotta put what
I'm
you're
looking for a community social worker that has a specialization is youth development.
Brian, can you, I'm sorry, we're just gonna, can you amend your motion to include within the current level of funding?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So to fund the program coordinator position within the current level of funding.
Second again.
Okay.
Tell me exactly what that means.
That means that
Within the existing
with the revised budget number that we laid out, that the town manager has laid out.
And for me, what that means, I've got to go back into the budget and cut $54,418 from existing budgets that you've already
Gotcha.
voted.
I just wanted clarification.
One of the things I noticed about youth services budget, it really didn't jump out at me prior to this year, but there is no overtime line item, which is an interesting thing in the budget, knowing how much that team works. You know, that's really representation, a representative of the dedication that they have to the function that they perform.
They're exempt. They're exempt from overtime. It's not like a blue-collar kind of position that would have an overtime.
Well, the
Professional
thing is,
positions
to go
are not,
overtime, you gotta be an hourly person.
Right.
It's a labor law.
So what we really want to do, though, is to, so Buzz has created a budget that meets that bottom line that we had set. So do we really want him to go back in and make $54,000 of additional cuts? Or amend that rate of growth, so then instead of a $200,000 reduction, it's a $150,000 reduction?
We have the same, you can't, you ask the schools to
Yeah.
do
Well,
something.
Or we don't vote for the position.
Yeah.
That may very well be the
That's an
smart
option.
thing to do over there, but.
Alex? Yeah, can I say something?
Sure.
Yeah, Andover comes together to put on Clown Town, Know Your Town fairs, the telethon that Bill put on, Run for the Troops last week. Why are we talking about this, just the Board of Selectmen? Bill's position is going to involve and benefit the entire community, school committee. Everyone should be at this table. But what Bill's trying to do is serve the community, not the Board of Selectmen, not the town budget. But you should look at the big picture, what's best for the town. And I don't understand why constantly, year after year after year, it's school versus town, this and that. Bill's example here will benefit everyone in this community, elderly, young, old, whatever, grandchildren, everyone. And why isn't everyone here, all the stakeholders here at this table? But that's the problem with this town. It's always town versus school. Bill has a tremendous idea to work together and fund it from the entire town, not Buzz's budget, not Marilyn McGrath's budget, but the town budget. That's what you guys should look at. Do what's best for the town, not Buzz's budget, not Marilyn McGrath's budget, but do what's best for the town.
Mr. Vispoli, I had my hand up, and I'm sorry, Mr. Peckett's going to.
Go ahead, Mary.
I'm going to tell you something. All of you are not going to like it. Basically, I'm going to reiterate the fact that I've been sitting in this audience since '79. I've heard the same story, a different version, but the same story since '79. Now, I didn't have to deal or listen to Bill Fahey that's going to be the hero of the children in this community. He is not the hero. We
Let's
didn't
not
have
personalize
youth
this,
services.
Mary,
Yeah.
no personalization, all right? You're gonna be gabbled out.
I'm going to personalize.
No, you're not personalized.
I'm personalizing.
Don't personalize.
Wait a
You're out
minute.
of order
Don't
then.
you tell me what I'm going to do. I am a resident of this community,
It's
and
not
I am not
personal.
going to be put off by you.
You can ask a question, but
No,
it's not a personal
I'm
attack
telling you
on
right
anybody.
now, I'm going to personalize it, but it won't be the way that you
Mary,
want it
Mary,
personalized. Wait a
not
minute.
personalize it.
I'm going to tell you something that
can't
Bill
speak about
Fahey
it.
may not
You-
like to hear.
You just
Wait.
can't speak about an employee.
Listen,
or
Mr.
another
Major,
town person.
let's not go there, huh? I get that story with you. The bottom line is, I lost my mother when I was 11 years old, and when the youth of this community was speaking a short time ago in the audience, it brought me back. I was 11 years old and she was 35. I didn't have to depend on youth services to come and, abide by me. I depended on Notre Dame nuns. So what's happening today is the adults of this world are just not doing the job they're supposed to be doing. They're not supposed to be parents. They're not acting like parents. This is all about adults and going out and two people in a family going to work during the day, having children come home to a house and being latchkey children. Those kids are lost. They're lost. They don't know what to do with themselves. That's the bottom line. I can personalize it because I've lived it. I've lived my life since I lost my mother as a young girl, and I proceeded forward. I made a better person of my life, but there are not a lot of Mary Carbonis out there. And Bill Fahey is not the answer to it either. We need the police department involved here. The police department was there when I needed them. They were there. So those are the people we need. We need people in charge. We don't need politicians to make decisions for the people in this community. And they're not always good decisions. So we're talking about $54,000. Now, Fahey has a department. He has a department. He has everything, the bells and whistles that he always wished for. He goes to the police station and represents these kids when they're in trouble to help bail them out before the judge. So don't tell me what this is all about. I know what this is all about. I know the inside workings of the town of Andover. So basically, I'm not doing a sympathy issue here, but when I heard those kids in the audience tonight almost crying because they was losing their jobs for helping, it brought me back to when I lost my mother at 11 years old. Okay? She was 35. So don't you give me any lip service, Mr. Vespoli. I am sick and tired of it. I am not running for office. Just remember that. And I'll speak as a resident of this community whenever I decide to speak.
As long as you don't attack someone
Just
personally. That's the
well,
rule
I'm
here.
telling you.
Okay.
I'm telling you. Maybe I know too much, huh? Maybe I know too much.
Tom?
Tom Diesel, 81 High Street. I frankly, I don't sense that this position has been vetted sufficiently. But I also don't feel like I know enough about this, that as the person who's heading the department. If he feels that strongly about it, I guess I don't have a problem with it. I will say, however, that if you're going to fund this and decrease the amount of money that you've asked the town manager to take from his budget, I think it's only fair to contact the school department when you leave here tonight and tell them to put $100,000 back in their budget. Because if you're going to do a cut and you're going to make it proportional, and again, I think it could probably be done. I think you could find $50,000 in this budget somewhere. But if you don't sense that that's the thing to do, then I think you need to let the school department put $100,000 back in the budget.
Fair
You
comment.
need to know that right away.
Fair comment, Tom. And the reason we're back here, just to put some color around this, is that the last meeting we had, it had been pulled off the budget. So we really haven't had a chance to really talk about this. And we had an opportunity tonight, so we put it on the agenda to have this conversation. So the point is well taken. Point is well taken. Mike?
Okay. First of all, I agree with Mary Carboni. We grew up in a different time, all right? We grew up in a time when parents, the mother stayed home, the father worked, and it's changed. Now we have two parents working, and unfortunately, and we're in a community that the kids, they don't understand what we went through, and they don't understand not having money. It seems to me I mean, you can't get a kid to shovel. Bill will tell you that there was a program where kids would shovel, make a few bucks to help out some seniors in the town, and that went by the wayside. And it's just a whole different world. And if he tells me, you know, you have a school system, but it takes care of kids during the school. The problem is when they get out. And if he says to me that he could help kids when they're outside of school, I say, I don't care about the budget. I say, give him what he wants, because the kids that I know he's dealing with, they get into, you know, marijuana, drugs. They're lost. The parents are out there working, or they're not at home. These kids are wandering the streets, doing what they want during the day, during early evening, and they don't have the disciplines that I had when I was growing up. I mean, I was 16 and I had to be home at 10 from a date. You know, I can remember running home. Oh, I gotta get home. I gotta get home. It's just not that way today. And he is the after-school moderator for the parents, and it is parents, and you all should listen to this. It's parents that aren't putting the disciplines in place. So he is our, you don't want to call him a savior? Well, raise your hands. You don't want to call him a savior? I call him a savior, because he is our disciplinarians, because we're not. And, well, my kids are far past that, so I'm not a disciplinarian anymore. But if he says that this program will help, these kids, I want this $1.1 million. I want it for the seniors, I want it for the taxpayers. But I can't believe that we can't come up with that money somehow to fund a position that could help with, the drug problem that's out there, or they don't even have to be on drugs. They just have to be kids that are on the outside. I gotta tell you, one of the problems with the town of Andover is it's very cliquey. If you move in from the outside, if you're not a townie, if your kids didn't grow up in this town from day one, it's very hard for them to break in. They have limited friends, and if they don't get accepted by the in crowd, the in kids, then, I had 3 groups when my kids were growing up. There was the jocks, okay? There were kids that were not jocks, and then there were kids that the only way they were getting accepted were from the kids that were, I don't want to call them druggies, but they were kids that were having a tough time in the town. Bill Fahey deals with these kids, and if he says that this position will help those kids, then I'm all for it. And I don't care if we don't reach 1.1, okay? He is, as far as I'm concerned, the after-school savior for our kids. And I've always felt that way about someone in his position. North Andover has that position, and it happens to be, well, I don't even want to get personal, okay? But it was, something personal to me. And I tell you, if he thinks this program will, hiring this person will really help, go for it. I mean, you listen to the school department, they have this huge budget, and they scare you with tactics like, well, we have to cut all these people out of the special education, and then you get all the special education needing families, you get them abroad. Well, this is a political tactical that all politicians use, scare tactics. We gotta cut all these special needs people, and that's why, it causes this big uproar. It's not fair. It's not fair. They're very smart on how they use their tactics to get your money. This year is special. Why? Because we've had enough with the tax increases, okay? And we're trying to come to a position that is fair. We haven't been fair. The school department hasn't been transparent.
Okay, but
And
just
that's
Mike,
why-
we gotta stay focused on this.
All right,
There's a couple of
I
them,
am
right, that-
focused,
couple of
because-
hands.
Because you can't give him the money because of all this transparency that hasn't been there. And we're in the position we're in because you're trying to save the money.
Understand,
And
Mike.
they come back and say, well, we have to cut all these people, okay? And so you can't give him the money because they say they're gonna cut all these positions and then everybody else gets all upset. He
Okay.
should have what he
Mike,
needs,
Mike, we got it, okay, we got
You
it.
got
That's
it?
your point, that's your point.
so I can go
Okay.
home and go to
No,
bed.
no, you have to stay. You have to stay.
Okay,
Are you
So-
gonna say yes?
Mary's gonna speak right now.
yeah, let me ask Bill a question. In your department, how would you prioritise this position within your existing department,
They would be in charge of the community support programs that
relative to the other services that you provide?
Right. they would be there
How would you
focused on it.
how would you prioritise this position relative to all of the other activities that you do?
Well, it gives me the ability so that they can kind of focus, that would be a lot of their job description, and they would focus on enhancing and creating more programs in our community that, quite frankly, you can't get to. There's a lot going on. What everybody's talking about here, this is youth development.
I understand.
There's change.
I'm trying to
Everybody's
understand.
talking about change in our world, then it's kind of this and that, and so
Okay,
we're
let's-
creating.
Let's stick to
I'm
the
asking
facts.
for a
I'm-
position.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
just
I'm
trying to
usually-
understand. I'm
Yep.
just trying to understand
Yes.
within the existing organisation, right? So you do lots of different things. If you plug this position in there,
Yes.
is it the most important position in the department? Is it next most important? How does it rank with regards to the activities that
The way
you?
we run our department is each and every one of them, and they're here today, are vital to the success of our organization, because that's how.
But in any organisation, some things are more vital than others.
I'm not sure exactly, someone buzz it up, Alex, I don't understand the question.
I think she's trying to ask where this priority ranks in your department.
I guess it would be like asking the question for police, are the guys, the patrol officers and the drug enforcement officers and the undercover folks, which one's most important? Well, in order to have a strong program, you need all three.
Well, for
You know,
instance, in
so
the fire
it's-
department, your responders. I'm just trying to understand.
We don't have this position right now, so by having this position.
But you have a vision for it.
Yeah, so it enhances the vision that we have for the community. So you could make an argument that's
Guys,
more
you see
important than
everybody's
another.
hands up. I'm not sure we're gonna have time for everybody. We've gotta have this conversation, so so just see your hands up. Probably have time for a couple of them, but not right this minute, okay?
So,
Continue.
to me, it's of the utmost importance that we have the opportunity, like I said, I've been asking for a position for many years to help address some of the issues that we see in the change in the society, the change in the community, the change in the family. We're all under it, we feel it, we see it in our own lives. So this approach, this youth development approach is a community approach. It's different than, it's a school approach. So it's every position, there's not a lot of us, there's 4 of us. Every position is key to our success. But this position helps us address some of the community issues that aren't being addressed. And I think as a community, this department stepped forward with a way to help. It's not gonna solve the problems. I'm very uncomfortable with people using the word savior in my name. I've worked extremely hard to be one of the people in the town that does great
Hello,
work.
Christ.
Yeah, Mike, I really appreciate it. But I think what I'm saying, in some respects, Mary's right what she's saying, but she's wrong in terms of the world's changed. We're not gonna go backwards, we're going forward. So, like all these departments, it's no different than what any other department that you actually support or request.
No, it is different because you're dealing with the youth. And
Yeah, but can I say this too, because I feel strongly about saying this, that we had over 100 kids organized and participate in the telethon and raised their community $100,000 last week. So I think there's some confusion actually what's going on. You know, there are amazing young people in this community. They themselves, at our forum that we had, they acknowledged that it's not one simple answer. You know, that we're not going to specialize in this. What we're going to do is hire someone that is an expert at community programming, developing systems of support for young people, working with the people that we already have in place. A couple of them are raising their hands, you know, and what they're going to do is we're going to be effective and cost efficient. We're going to meet some of the goals that you have as selectmen to be able to. You got to get a town employee who loves these young people, works hard, rolls up their sleeves, and goes to work with the rest of our team. So I don't know, Mary, if I'm actually answering the question. I'm struggling with it. I'm usually pretty good at questions, but I'm not sure what. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
That's okay.
Okay, let me just take a quick check of the board here. You have a motion that's been seconded, and I really think it revolves around how we're going to. Is there anyone that is against filling this position? Let me ask it like that. Is there any opposition to the position in general?
I am.
Okay, from a funding standpoint? Or from
As someone in the audience said a moment ago, I don't think it's been fully vetted.
So what would have to, how would we fully vet this to satisfy that? Mary, in your position?
I mean, this went through the budget process, was not presented by the town manager,
Right.
correct? Is that correct,
That
Buzz?
is correct, yeah. This year, I knew we had we were going to have the ability to add additional positions. Subsequently, the board didn't like that stance I took, my series of recommendations. But in the fall, when we were developing budgets, I said that if you had a budget request for a position, make it now. Bill requested 2, all right? I recommended the program assistant, not the program coordinator. So, you know, as I understand it, as he said today, he is more interested in having the higher level position, because I think that person, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it sounds like that person would be able to do more in terms of developing programs for youth and their families, and not having more of an assistance role like I had originally recommended. And then, of course, the request was for a reduction of $200,000. And then I looked at the positions that were there. There were, electrician's position, we were funding in another fashion. There was more work, continued work to go on there. I felt that was a higher priority than a brand-new kind of position.
Thank you. That clarifies for me.
Can we speak?
Not yet. Okay, sorry. So, motion's on the table. Your motion was to,
The motion is to add the position. My preference is to add the position, but not make additional cuts to the budget proposed. I would, my preference would be to reduce the rate of spending by the $54,000. The rate of increase, I guess, reduce the rate of increase. So instead of having a $200,000 cut, a $150,000 cut, because I think the more we do that, if we're basically asking the town manager to cut $250,000 out. If we do it the way that the motion's out.
I'm just trying to think of the conversation we're having with the schools.
Yeah, and I agree with Mr. Disa that, quite frankly, if we did that, then, likewise, we should, look to a similar addition to their budget proportionally. I just think that it's nice to have a target, and we've really set an aggressive target of trying to reduce $1.1 million. And being able to have that as a tax break, a one-year tax break. To do so, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna be really, really tight. I think, in this case, we see the benefit that we'd be able to get out of it. It's, I don't think it's necessarily wise to have the town manager cut another $50,000 out of the budget that we just walked through last week.
Well, it would be more than 50,000 because the position would be X
Yep.
plus the associated
Yep.
costs. You're probably talking more like 65.
Yep, you're right.
Well, as Joanne pointed out, there's a lot of variables right now in the budget. And, my concern is, it would seem hypocritical to me to say, oh yeah, now we're gonna say we don't have to meet the $200,000 threshold. And we're gonna say school's at it. I completely agree with Mr. Dezo, Tom, that if we ever went that direction, we should free
Not
up
good.
and recommend that added amount of funding
Yeah.
for the schools as well. But to me, that says we think that this position's more important than all the other positions out there, so that we're gonna now authorize the town manager to go and change our $200,000 savings target.
Isn't that what
trying
we're
to do.
doing?
I'm sorry?
Isn't that the message that we're sending right now? Is that this position that's been presented before us is that important that we're gonna have this discussion?
May I
Well, I don't
ask
think we had a thorough discussion last time, because honestly, I would have preferred to have Bill in some of those discussions. He hasn't
I
presented it to us as
completely
of
agree
yet.
with that.
But I think that
So let me ask the town manager.
just going back and saying, well, we think this position's more important than all the other positions, and the schools weren't in that position to say, okay, we need to add $50,000 more into our budget. So
Yeah.
we asked them to cut 400. We should respect
Yep.
the target, really.
I agree.
And I don't want to say that this position's more important than an instructional assistant position at all. We're trying to look at it really at a level playing field. I think that they're
I'm dying.
we haven't asked,
Lafayette.
I mean, I asked the town manager a week or so ago to think about how he could fund it within the 200,000, with the 200,000 in savings, and we haven't heard from him about the feasibility of this yet. So he might have already defined a way to do this. So, that's, and I know that I had asked him that, so.
That's a valid point.
So, we could be, maybe he's already looked at it and said, oh yeah, I figured it out. So,
So let me ask the town manager a question, because you oversee the budgets townwide and have to take into account all the varying priorities. Of the positions that you've had to pull out this year, if you had the option right now to put one back in, what would be your top priority?
Of the positions that I've cut out,
The ones that we, the
Yeah, I-
custodian, the electrician,
Right.
What would be your number one,
I would say this would be the next one, if I were to add another one in.
ahead of the electrician?
No, the electrician's in,
Is in.
That's
Electrician's
it.
in, sorry.
Yeah,
but as a temporary.
yeah.
Correct.
But the electrician's in, and I don't want to rethink that. That's in. I'm not here to rethink that one. But if there was an additional one, it would be this position. I mean, the custodian piece we hit in for half the year. I think with the contribution that the Andover Youth Foundation is going to make, we can figure out the custodial piece.
Okay.
Is Paul?
Paul just dialed in.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Selectmen,
Thanks for having me, Mike.
All right. Two
Hi, my
points.
name is Cheryl Tedesco. I'm a health educator in Andover at the middle school level. And I'll be brief, but I'd like to speak to a couple of points that were previously made. Regarding Ms. O'Donoghue's comment about asking Mr. Fahey to prioritize those positions, that would be like asking the school department to prioritize who is more important. Your math teacher, your health teacher, your physical education teacher, your AP science teacher. We're here to educate the whole child 100% of the time, if not more. Regarding the comment about who Youth Services serves, Youth Services does not just serve the kids who are at risk. I take issue with that, great issue with that. Youth Services serves 6,000 kids in our community, all different types of kids. Kids with moms who have the privilege to be able to stay at home. Kids whose moms and dads work full-time. Many, many youth are served by Bill and his very, very small staff. Third fact, I think we need, and Ms. O'Donoghue, this is to your points as well regarding vetting the position. Andover every other year conducts the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which is a national survey done by the CDC, and it assesses the health of our youth. 14% of Andover youth in 2011 in middle school reported having suicidal thoughts. 14% of 600 is over 82 kids. 8% of those students had made a plan. If you look at one of the our recent half day was spent. Andover brought in a specialist from Harvard University to talk about the increased stress that teens are feeling at the middle and high school level. That conversation was particularly geared towards middle school. The following early release day, that conversation was directed toward elementary school. If you are in the trenches, you see the heightened anxiety, the heightened stress, and the desperate need for kids to connect. They don't connect when they go home and close their doors and get on their cell phones. They isolate even more. The CDC also has protective factors and risk factors. Mr. Fahey's program addresses those protective factors. He increases the connectivity among adults and students. He provides strong mentors who have strong moral values, who have vision, who understand the pulse, the heartbeat of our youth, what they need, what they want, and give them incredible guidance on a daily basis. And then finally, I'd like to address Mr. Kowalski's point regarding the overtime that Andover Youth Services puts in. Theirs is not a 40-hour job. I don't even think their job is a 60-hour-a-week job. It's far more than that. For $54,000, you are getting an incredible bargain, and I'd jump on it right away.
Okay, one more comment.
Hi there, my name's Kelly, and I live at 1 Carter Lane. And
Kelly, your last name?
Oh, sorry, Kelly Sutliff. And I just want to address that I think it needs to happen. I'm a mother of 3 teenagers, a freshman, a sophomore, and a senior at my home. And my children have all gone through AYS, and agreeing with Cheryl, you know what, they're active kids, they're fun kids, they're not, lucky, knock on wood, no one's been involved with drugs or anything like that. But we've been a part of AYS forever, since we moved here 10 years ago. So we've seen the benefits of just letting kids be kids. So when this whole process came about with the drug issue and depression and that kind of thing, I've seen it all because my kids are at an 1,800-person high school. And we know of families who have contended with problems with their children who are have been exposed to drugs, on top of the fact that the system's really broken. And kids who have unfortunately gone through the system when they're a drug user, it's broken from many levels, from the state level to assistance to all kinds of things. Even our insurance programs are not even helping this. So I'm a big proactive person that, you know what, it's like when we have our children and we say the stove is hot, don't touch it. We warn them so they don't touch it, right? We don't say, okay, don't touch the stove, and now you're gonna know not to touch that stove. Well, same concept with children. You have to create awareness, you have to create programs, you have to bridge our high school level to our middle school level to liaison this along with our youth services to put that as a component there, so we can prevent kids who are gonna OD. And on top of that, I don't even think people really even understand, like, heroin. I bet, how much do you think heroin is on the street? Take a guess.
Cheap.
$8.
It's cheap.
$8. It's cheaper than a joint. So that is where the problem is. It's easy access, it's there. And I only know that because I have a friend of mine whose daughter has been in rehab and gone through all of that, and that's how she grabs it. It started with OxyContin, and then it went to that. Because OxyContin's $80 on the street. So that's why we have the heroin problem. It's so cheap that you can have easy access to it. But see, it's not just heroin for the program that we need, it's all the prevention part, because there's so many kids who are depressed, so many kids there's kids at our high school that have monitors with them, walking in our high schools because they're suicide watch. I mean, we need to catch reality here of really what's happening, and you know what? And as a component with all that, we're better than that as a town. And I think we really just have to work from our highest and best good here. And if we don't fund it, we really aren't working from our highest and best good.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. There's one more hand in the back. Then Mike, there's somebody else who has their hand up?
Are you trying to ignore me because I don't see any other
No, it's
hands?
fine. We can't ignore you.
I just want to say to that lady, I wasn't trying to exclude all the other kids. It's just that I know that he deals with those that are most at risk. And I know that he deals with kids that aren't so at risk. But the kids that are most at risk are the ones that worry me the most. And he is the front line of that. The school, you know, if you think about what happens, most of the stuff that happens outside of school, it's not happening right in the school. And those are the kids he's dealing with, the kids that do stuff outside of school. They don't necessarily get their drugs at school. They get their drugs outside of school. You know, they cohabitate, not cohabitate, but get together. And he...
Coordinate.
What is it?
Coordinate.
Coordinate, well, they get together.
Okay.
The pressure, there's a lot of pressure outside of school. And he deals with those kids. And, you know, I keep pushing for the selectmen to, you know, save, but I believe in him. And I believe that he cares greatly about the kids in this town. And that's the only reason why I came back tonight. I was home, I was ready to go to bed. And I was watching this on TV and I heard, you know, his plea.
Okay.
All right, you got it.
And only
Part of the youth development thing is developing advocates for young people.
You've done a good job there.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
I
thank you.
just believe in you.
I
You may not be the savior, but
I ain't the savior, brother.
believe in you.
Okay, we've got a Mike, please stay, Mike. We've got a motion on the motion been made and seconded to fund the position within the 200,000 baseline level. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Paul, I don't think you can vote, but
He can vote.
he can vote.
He can vote.
Okay, we didn't announce in the beginning.
Yeah, you have to
That's
announce the
true. You
beginning
have
of
to
the
announce
meeting,
in
the
the
reason
beginning, so-
for non-presence.
Right at the beginning of the meeting. So anyway, it passes 3-1 to fund the position out of the existing budget level.
Should we ask?
So does that mean that the 200,000 is still in effect? Or?
Yes, it's still in effect. We haven't gone over that. We're saying that this position's got to be funded within the baseline budget today, which includes the $200,000 reduction. There's no increase in his budget. That's
Although
okay.
I would like to see at one of our next meetings, what that makeup looks like.
No, I have it for the 28th.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you all.
everyone for coming and speaking. The last item is a request that Mary had, even though we had gone through this, I think probably before, I'm not sure if it was before you were on the board or not, but the question around the laptop replacement program question. So, out of courtesy, put it on the agenda.
Thank you. So, my question arose out of the history behind this laptop situation. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but last year, for the current budget year, the school department was authorized to purchase 400 laptops.
Yes, out of the
Out of the cable fund.
Out of the cable fund, correct.
Okay. And it transpired somewhere along the process that, in actual fact, an additional 160 units were bought. Correct? Leased.
Yes, correct.
And the cost of same for year one was borne by the school operating, and then the request moving forward for years 2 and 3 and 4 was that the town would share in the cost, in the payment moving forward.
Yeah, so basically roll it into the funding source from the cable.
Right, okay. So that's number one. Number two, I guess when the planning for the purchase of these units originally happened, the plan was to have Windows-based laptops, which were estimated at somewhere in the $800 to $850 range.
Correct.
And then the school department decided to go with a Mac product, which is more 900 plus,
Correct.
but which also involve different software.
Correct.
So there's not just the additional cost for the 160 laptops, but there's additional software which had been budgeted, if I'm correct, Buzz, at somewhere in the $60,000 to $65,000 in the budget, and it came out when the new computers came in at 105, give or take. So we've got the cost of the additional 160 computers is one portion of the cost, and then you have the software part of it, which is approximately 55,000, Brian,
Yep.
give or take. And I guess my question to the town manager was, why is the town assuming any portion of the cost for this? If the school want to buy an extra 160 laptops or whatever, shouldn't it come from their budget?
Well, good question. And I think, as you recall from your time on the Finance Committee, we were wrestling this around. And we had a series of meetings. And at that meeting, a compromise was struck. And the compromise was that the cable fund would cover the leases, all leases, and that the general fund would cover the software costs, town and
So
school.
the cable fund would fund the additional 160?
Yes, that was
also?
rolled into the lease. Yes. That was rolled into the lease portion. At first, if you recall, a year ago, we were going to cover almost all of these costs out of the cable fund.
But we were talking about a different number of units.
A different number of units, but that was going to cover the software
Right.
and the hardware. So,
For the 400 units based on a Windows product.
right. In our discussion as a compromise, and no one was entirely happy with it, but, there were some winners and losers, and it was thought if we wanted to extend the life, well, it was felt that the hardware, the leases for the hardware, appropriately should come out of the cable fund. And by doing that, we felt that it would extend the life of the cable fund even more. Remember, the cable fund is covering four things now. It's covering the cost of ACAM, and it's covering, I think, $25,000 a year, maybe it's 50, for system improvements. And the third thing it's covering is the debt service for the original bond, okay? And then the fourth thing, as long as the money lasts, would be to supplement to cover the cost of the lease.
Of the 400.
Of the 400.
Right. Now, when you add in
And-
another 160 and you start talking about taking that out of the cable fund, we hadn't budgeted for that.
Well, but we had budgeted for not only the lease, but we had also budgeted for the software on top of it. So we pulled the software off and just said it'd just be the leases for the hardware coming out of the cable fund. The software was going to be covered by the general fund.
I guess more important actually is a situation where you go to town meeting and you get approval for X amount of computers, laptops, whatever they are, based upon certain software. And then you make changes after that, and then you decide to come back and ask for more money. So I think we have a situation where we need to be very, very clear to town meeting to say that if somebody decides after the fact to purchase, in this case, an additional 160 computers, then it ought to come out of your budget.
Well, that was
And you hold people
wrestled
accountable.
around. Yeah.
Well,
Let me see if I can just summarize
And I don't
and get out of the
disagree
way
with
so
you.
that
I'm
folks
just
can.
saying this was our compromise to move it forward.
So we had 160 additional laptops, and that had an additional cost of about $60,000. That was the lease increase. We
and
had
we agreed the first year of that lease was paid out of the current year
operating budget.
operating school budget.
Correct. This would just be for the next
Years
fiscal
2,
year.
3, 4.
2, 3, and 4, correct. And then there was added software for the increased number of units. And
Well,
there
for all
was,
units.
right. And we had some unexpected software that we hadn't planned on. And a portion of that is tied to 100 computers that the town got, in addition to the 560 that the school got. So all of that software increased expense was about $55,000. So those added together, there is $115,000 of additional expense beyond what we were expecting to take out of the cable fund on an annual basis.
Just for the software portion of it.
No, this was $115,000
Oh, that's
that takes into
55 and 60,
account
yes,
the
yeah.
hardware and the software
Software, yeah.
increases.
Mhm.
So one part of the request originally was, can we fund all of it out of the cable fund? And there was a concern associated with prematurely draining the cable fund by taking more money out of it on an annual basis. And so we took a look at the costs, and the software, the total cost of the software is about $103,000. We thought it was going to be around $50,000. All right, so it had this increase to it. And so what we said was, let's fund the laptops out of the cable fund. And that way we're not spending, I guess we're spending $12,000 more than we expected out of the cable fund. But it's roughly the same of what we were expecting to expend out of the cable fund. And let's take this, and remember, software was supposed to be in the cable fund. So we'd get hardware and software out of the cable fund for those laptops. Let's take this out. And so from an accountability perspective, the schools made a decision to get 160 new units. It was a decision, it was probably the wrong decision for the right reason, if I'm saying that correctly. So they wanted to do the right thing and get the laptops into their people's hands. They necessarily hadn't thought through the process of how we would fund it in the out years. So the accountability
pretty
is
important.
It is. It's extremely important, and you know, and it's something that we've addressed with the tri-board, et cetera. And there's an accountability aspect of it, and that's this piece here, which we're taking all the software expense and having that be funded out of the operating budget. So that's $103,000 that can't be spent on people or books or whatever. So there is an accountability aspect of this this decision that the schools made. And again, it was a decision to try to do the right thing. It was just hadn't thought through the whole funding aspect in the out years. But the agreement holds them accountable because we're taking all of the software expense and putting it on them. So to me, it does two things. Number one, it keeps the amount of funds that we had agreed to take out of the cable fund on an annual basis, and it keeps that pretty much level. And it says to the schools, that's fine, you made a decision about increasing the number of units, but you're gonna have to bear the responsibility, the financial responsibility of covering those extra units. So that's, just to try to summarize it, I hope, it's kind of a complicated subject, but I hope this helps folks.
So you're saying for the 160 additional units?
Yep.
Years 2, 3, and 4, that's being funded from?
So, again,
No, just the 160 additional units
So-
for the lease year 2, 3, and 4 is being funded from where?
from the cable fund.
I think that should come from the school department, because
So-
they ordered the units.
It's one or the other.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
They made the decision. So when you talk about accountability and transparency, the only reason that you really hold people to those standards is to say, fine, if you want to buy X amount more, it's in your budget. That's very clear to me.
So we can, but we've paid, so that's one option, is to go back and refigure everything.
Mhm.
And the numbers are basically gonna be the same, except would probably, account for $12,000 less out of the cable fund. This, in my opinion, was a clean way to cut it and just say, all right, let's just take all the software and we'll have that funded out of operating.
I think the
But-
cleanest way
but
to
whatever
cut
the
it is
board
to
wants to
allocate to, whomever has the responsibility, whoever made the decision has the responsibility for payment. And moving forward, that's the cleanest way to deal with it.
Anything else about that?
No, because we've already taken a position on this as
Yeah,
a board.
yeah.
I just wanted to make my position
Sure.
very clear on it.
Okay, so,
Did that help, or did that confuse things? Hopefully it helped to explain.
okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So seconded.
Seconded, all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye.